Heroes need good villains. They help define the world that you're creating, and they also express our greatest fears. Because of this, I talked to Critical Role's Matthew Mercer about villainy and story.
Any world you create is going to be a reflection of your values to some extent as a dungeon master. So, when you begin to create a world, that also is a chance to look at what your values are if you haven't been able to define them. As you said, when you create a villain, you're creating a character that you think exemplifies an aspect of villainy. What is it that makes them a bad person in your eyes? To me, a good villain in a good story is an individual that is still believable in their causes. You can have your maniacs, you can have your vile murderers who just are, the thrill of destruction is key to their existence. That's fine. But that also won't lend to a long-form narrative, in my opinion, as strongly as a villain that believes that they are not the villain. A villain that believes that what they're doing is the right thing to do and nobody else understands their purpose. Or if it's a vengeance-based ploy and you understand why they're doing what they're doing, even if you don't agree with it. If you can somewhat empathize with the villain, that puts you in the moral quandary of trying to understand who's really the bad guy and what am I willing to sacrifice to stop them? What are they willing to sacrifice to keep us from stopping them? And that to me is a much more dangerous threat than just a basic armored evil entity that wants to destroy the world. When you create your own world, these moral decisions, these villains, these antagonists are born out of your outlook on life, and you're trying to make the world a better place. You're trying to use these heroes, the device of this party, to eradicate or at least subdue these villainous forces, these people that are trying to undermine and destroy what you think is a good life, a good existence, a good world. And part of the journey is for you and the players to learn what it means to be a hero, what it means to be a victorious. What do you give up to win, and at what cost? I think Curse of Strahd or any of the Ravenloft games are a great example of heroes that go into a very distinctly evil place, but by the end of the campaign, who's really the villain at that point? A lot of parties, by the time they get to fighting Strahd, they may be on this as much a monster as he is. And I think that those stories to me are much more fascinating because it helps you as a player and you as the dungeon master really kind of pick apart the human condition in a very subconscious, fun game at the table with beer kind of way, as opposed to having a very distinct and sophisticated book club with friends and glasses of red wine swishing, which is fine. You can do that too. I'm not judging you. But for rolling dice and playing improv fantasy at a friend's house, you'll still be surprised on what you can learn about yourself and what it means to be a good person through these adventures that you create. And I don't know. That's one of the reasons why I think D&D makes the world a better place. Every now and then I'll have a frustrating moment in my life where I'm like, I get it. I see why the bad guys in comics poison the water main. And I have to shake my head and be like, no. The possibility of redemption is a very strong narrative tool. If your heroes believe that this villainous character has any opportunity to redeem themselves, then it doesn't become just a slaughter fest. There is an option, there is the possibility that they might be able to show them the wrong of their ways and either have them, be punished accordingly for it and possibly learn from these mistakes, or in their final moments, come to terms with the reality that they were wrong all along. And I think those are important moments for us to learn as people how to be better people. You need to see that perspective of seeing somebody go off the deep end, somebody to go to extreme lengths and to give into that unbridled hate or vengeful nature that a lot of people do naturally, and being able to live through this narrative in a very safe space amongst friends. Like any good story, any good TV show, or any good book, or any good movie, you learn a little bit about yourself each time you go through these stories. But with the joy of role-playing games is you're invested fully into it, both your imagination and you're actively altering the narrative with the choices you make. And you can't help but be viscerally affected by the story of a really good villain that you're pursuing and trying to possibly save, as well as bring them to justice. I don't necessarily create a character and then tailor a story to them. I create a story for a villain and then tailor what kind of character build or character would fit for that. So for me, I wouldn't say the villain characters are my player characters more than they are a device for me to explore some of these moral quandaries for myself and my players, and kind of learn through that. I've taken some topics like how much is a person willing to sacrifice for someone they love? If someone you truly love, to that obsessive level of love, and the world, it's you against the world, Bonnie and Clyde style, how far are you willing to go to try and maintain and salvage that relationship with the one versus the many? And I think there's something really primal in the truth of that, but very dangerous. You know, when you're so focused on one other person and what you have that nobody else matters, that becomes a very dangerous villain. I've also touched on topics like toxic masculinity, the victimization of one's own experience, not taking responsibility for the fact that you might be a difficult or insufferable person at times, and blaming others for how they react to that, and victimizing yourself while still also putting up the idea that you're always right and the world is against you. I've created villains that tackle, elements of megalomania and a selfish level of obsession. And I could say each villain, to a certain extent, that I've created starts as a seed of a person I've met, probably, and probably all of you have met too, because all of us have the possibility in ourselves to become a villain. That's even the nicest, most wonderful people have dark thoughts. It's just part of being a human being. It's those that let those dark thoughts control their actions and overrule their conscious mind and consume and become the defining characteristic of their personality. Those are the ones that eventually the heroes have to rise up and set down.